All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Life Switch podcast, where we highlight interesting career journeys and stories from folks who have either switched careers or quite literally switched up their life. In the past, we've talked to product managers and management consultants, and this time we are talking with one of my best friends, Nick Durr. I have all of his socials, or he has all of his socials already up in his cleverly designed Zoom background right over there, but I'll throw them down in the description below. Nick is a entrepreneur, and he is someone actually who transitioned from the traditional 9 to 5 or corporate job to pursue entrepreneurial ventures. So for those of you who are working in your traditional corporate job and are considering leaving and doing your own thing, becoming your own boss, I feel like this is going to be a really inspirational story for you. And we're going to try and tease out some tactical and helpful learnings from Nick's journey that you can take and move forward with yours as well. So Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Corey. I'm really, really happy to be here. And hello, everyone, to you guys watching, listening, wherever however you're consuming this. I'm excited that you guys are taking time to be with us.
Yeah. So for some context, Nick and I became friends almost by happenstance and through chance. We ended up being in the same pledge class for our business fraternity back at Santa Clara University, and I haven't been able to get rid of Nick ever since.
It's definitely a love-hate relationship. I love Corey. He hates me. No, dude, I remember the first time we met, I think you were sitting on your longboard in a suit, and I was like, who is this guy?
Yep,
This
that's
guy's
right.
awesome. Yeah.
Oh man. So what we normally do is we kick things off. We'll give Nick Nick will give his own origin story, and then I'll ask some follow-ups, and we'll dive deeper from there. So yeah, why don't you give everyone a background about who you are and how you came to be?
Yeah, totally. So to the long and the short of it is, what you really need to know about me is that I am someone who is really committed to being of service for people. And that looks like a lot of different ways. And if I look at the different aspects of my life, it really did look in different ways. So like, I thought I was going to go to West Point Military Academy and serve for the Army as a way of being of service. Now I'm a videographer. I'm also a financial coach. And so a lot of the careers that I've had, one, always fit inside of the context of how can I be of service. And in the transitions and jumps that I did, what I found was any time that I was not being of service or really able to utilize my full gifts is when I knew that there was time to transition. So like Corey mentioned, I went to Santa Clara University, and within 3 years of graduating, I had 7 different jobs. And so if that communicates anything, I'm someone who is like, hey, I'm either all in or I'm all out. And I'm very quick to make decisions, which I think is extremely powerful in today's day and age as it relates to career fulfillment and, the path that you're taking. So I worked a very traditional corporate, not even 9 to 5. It was like 6 to 10, right? Like 6 a.m. to 10. I was like working like 70, 80-hour weeks. I was working on the weekends in San Francisco at a investment management firm. And from there, I really saw that, one, I needed to be around people because I was behind a computer all day. And I just knew that like there were other aspects of my life outside of career that were really important to me, and that career couldn't be the only thing that was at the forefront for me. So from there, I'll breeze through this really quickly, but from there I moved back to LA, which is where I'm from, worked at the Honest Company with Jessica Alba, selling diapers and retaining clients, and got really good at talking to angry moms and crying babies in the background. And from there, I actually got headhunted to work at a financial planning firm, where I was able to utilize, a little bit of what I learned in college. From there, started my own financial coaching business. I was in like real estate loans for a little bit. I was actually a recruiter for 3.5 days. And then it was actually that job. That was the last one before I started my company. When I was like, wow, I enjoy the freedom. I enjoy the autonomy. I enjoy doing what I truly want to do. And I realized that it was that moment when I was like, okay, I need to pursue entrepreneurship. And so, for me, the last thing I'll say about this, for me growing up, like, my dad's a postal carrier and my mom has been a stay-at-home mom. So entrepreneurship was never in the cards for me. Like, no one in my family was an entrepreneur. And so it really was a mindset shift and a paradigm shift for me to pursue that. And, it was definitely scary in having those conversations with my parents. So, I just did everything that I could and did my best to have authenticity and being of service be at the forefront to get to where I am today.
Man, there is a lot to unpack there. So Nick, Nick and I were both finance majors at Santa Clara University, and so you did use your major or your degree for your first role, right, when you graduated?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure you know this, but I also changed my major like 5 times at Santa Clara, right? Like I am a all in or all out kind of guy. Just like, yeah, let's try this. Nope, that's not going to work. Let's go back. But yeah, I now what I'm doing, definitely I am using what I learned, but even too also, I mean, like I'm sure you have this conversation with a lot of people that you bring on or just, people that you serve, like college in and of itself is an extremely interesting conversation, right? And if
Mm,
we look at all of the big companies that are no longer requiring college degrees, the question then becomes like, okay, what is it that I really want to do? What is it that I need to know? And is college even necessary, right? So even with transition, right, it doesn't have to be an entry level job.
yeah, and I think one of the things to highlight too that sometimes people either know or subconsciously don't know is they really anchor on the fact that, look, I spent $200,000 or however much money it was. I spent 4 years of my life to get this degree to focus on finance. And so it would be a waste for me to quit this great job that, my parents, and we'll talk about that in a moment too, because as you were talking about what entrepreneurship means to your family, it can be a waste, right? And so they're sometimes afraid to make that leap because they know that they worked so hard, they've spent so much money, and they should just stick it out, right? Whether that's finance, marketing, sales, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one of the things that was interesting that you mentioned is that when you're in your first role, you were stuck behind a computer all the time. You wanted to be around people. Now, I know that a common thing in that industry is that's just what you do in the beginning, right? You start off as an analyst, and then later on, as you work your way up the food chain, then you will eventually get to work more face to face with clients. You'll start selling things, closing deals, etc. So
Yeah.
why didn't you just want to stick it out like most
Yeah.
people would have? Because if the only thing you don't like is that you're not talking to people, if you were talking to a mentor or like your manager, right, at the time, and you were like, hey, I like my job, but I kind of want to be more in front of people, and so I'm going to quit. They'd be like, Nick, just stick it out, man. Like 1 or 2 years from now, you'll be talking to people. So why didn't you just want to stick it out? That's
Yeah.
what I feel like normal people would have done.
Yeah, that's a great question. And if there's anything that I know about me and that other people should know is that I am not a normal person. And I think it's always good to kind of check in with yourself and see are you on the side of the majority or the minority, right? I forgot who said that. There was some philosopher guy, but anyway. Just to provide a little more context, like I quit that job within the 6 month period. That it was like a performance review. So I think I started in like, I don't know, May or June. And then by the end of the year, it was like, hey, we are offering you this position. And I said no, and, moved back to LA, et cetera. But one of the biggest things that I really saw was the work wasn't enjoyable for me, being behind a computer. And even when I looked at the associates, the senior associates, the, managers, et cetera, one of the things that I noticed was like, wow, the trajectory or this climbing of the food chain does not excite me. And so like looking back, if I had actually, once I received the offer, because when I received the offer, I think at like the beginning of senior year at college. And so I completely took my foot off the gas pedal. It's like, I'm just going to chill, right? I got the offer. That's what college is for, right?
Uh-huh.
And however, if I went and said, hey, can I shadow you for a day? Like, can I actually see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis as soon as you get in until you leave? And I did that prior to actually accepting the role and starting, I totally would not have taken the job. And so
Mm.
that was something that I now do and make sure that other people really ask is like, what does your day to day look like? And I know that's like I don't know if it's like a common interview question, right? But like, no, I seriously want to know what you do on a day to day basis because you can't they can't lie about like what it is that they do on a day to day basis, right? So yeah, so to answer your question, like why didn't I just stick it out? One, I didn't see a future for myself.
Mm.
Even if I was able to talk to clients, I realized like the type of work that I thought I would be doing, and then also the work that the higher ups were doing was not work that I wanted to do. And so that's when I knew like I need to do something that is more fulfilling to me. And last thing that I think the thing would be valuable, I was earning, I think it was like $108,000 a year, like when I broke it out, and
Which is a
I
lot
left
for a
that.
recent college grad, right? Like,
Yeah, 100%,
yeah.
100%. And, I left that job with no job lined up going back to LA. And I was actually
Hmm.
like unemployed for 3 months, right? Looking for a job. And then I don't know if you're going to ask this later, but the job that I took working at the Honest Company, I was working for $14.50 an hour. So from $108,000 salary to $14.50, which I think on an annual basis is what, like $29,000 a year, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
you can imagine how happy my dad was, right? And to make things worse, like I live in Pasadena, and the Honest Company was in like Santa Monica. So I was in the car 4.5 hours a day to commute to work to earn 14.50 an hour. And then, you know what I mean? But again, like talking about like the future that I saw for myself, like at that moment or at that time, I guess in 2015, I am not married and I don't have any kids. But at that time, I was like, wow, it would be so awesome. Yeah, and again, nothing career related, but I was like, it would be so awesome to just like be in the world of like parents and kids and stuff like that. And I was just like, first of all, this is really weird, but I was like, okay, let me start researching companies that actually have that at the forefront, right? Like new parents, raising kids, babies, stuff like that. And that's how the Honest Company came up. So it was complete 180.
So how do you, I guess, encourage yourself? I think is probably the best way to describe it. How do you talk yourself into quitting a job that is paying you very, very well, has really good career trajectory and growth, is quote unquote safe, is a job that utilizes your degree, that makes your parents and family very, very happy? How do you talk yourself into making that leap of faith? Because you even left without a job lined up, right?
Mhm.
So what goes mentally? Because I feel like that's the biggest barrier for a lot of the folks who are considering
Yeah.
um, doing the, their own thing. How do you kind of convince yourself like it's going to be okay and I'm
Yeah.
going to do this?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And the first thing I'm going to say is it definitely is not easy. So I can totally appreciate, those of you listening who are really dealing with it, right? Like it's a challenging thing to actually like say, hey mom, hey dad, like I'm not happy. Right. And that's the conversation I need to have. Like for me, the tipping point was I was extremely unfulfilled. Like I was very unhappy. I was completely going through the motions. And I just like pictured my life for another 6 months at that company. And I was just like, I can't do it. And unfortunately, I would say that human beings have a very high pain tolerance, right? Like just the amount of stuff that people will go through. It's just like, it's difficult to watch, right? And I've been there for sure.
What did unhappy at your job look like for you? Because maybe someone doesn't, maybe someone is actually in that same scenario, but they just don't recognize that they're actually unhappy. So what did it look like for you?
Yeah. So like on the court, so I was fortunate enough to live maybe like a 2-minute walk from my building. So what I would do is one, I was wasting a lot of time. this can't go out anywhere. But even I mean, it's fine. But anyway, um, lunch would happen at 12. I would actually leave 30 minutes early. So I'd leave at 11:30. I actually go to my apartment. I take a nap for like an hour and a half, right? Like I was just avoiding work, right? I would go in at 5 because I was also so close, or like 5, 6 a.m. And I would just like sit there and just like organize emails. It just do things that were not actually productive. I was literally wasting time.
Oh, that's an
Um,
interesting distinction.
yeah,
Hmm.
I was wasting time. And then also I went on a lot of coffee breaks. Like they had coffee in the office, but I would go out 3 to 4 times a day to the ferry building to like go to Blue Bottle. And then there's a pizza between, the Embarcadero. Like I was wasting time. Like, and I was not excited about work at all, you know? And that's
Oh.
what unhappy looked like for me.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I know I interrupt you. You were in the middle of your thought of
All
like
good.
convincing yourself. So yeah, how do you like what I guess mentally goes through your head, or what thoughts do you say where you're just like take like I'm gonna quit. I'll figure it out later. You
Mm,
mentioned it's gonna be hard and you're gonna have to talk your parents through it because I'm at 22, 23 years old. Your parents are still a huge component of your life. So yeah, I guess how do you ultimately convince yourself that it's okay?
yeah, for sure. I think so. A couple things, like, I could easily look at the actions that I was taking, or the inactions, right? Like the things I was not doing, to really like be straight with myself around, okay, what is it that is really important to me? And are my actions consistent with the future that I'm envisioning for myself, right? So you would have seen me watching a bunch of Eric Thomas videos, a bunch of like motivational Alan Watts, like Steve Jobs, Stanford commencement speech kind of things. And I was just like, yes, this is exactly how I am feeling about myself, how I'm feeling about the role, how I'm feeling just about
Mm.
life. And so I knew that I was just like looking for something externally. Um, and that leads me to the next part, which is I've been really, really fortunate to have such amazing people around me, particularly like mentors. And so in having conversations with mentors, being able to speak to someone who not only knows who I am and what I'm capable of and believes in me, but also has been where I want to go, has been instrumental. And so this is fast forwarding a little bit, but in 2019, I moved to Des Moines, Iowa to work with a mentor that I had met through Delta Sigma Pi back in like 2012. And so like that mentor, Adam Carroll, just him alone has like like really made an influence in, the career trajectory that I've had. So uh, a lot of conversations with mentors, noticing that like at the end of the day, everybody's going to die. I am going to die. I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled, and I want to feel like I'm actually making a difference. In the investment management job, like the minimum assets under management, like it was like $100 million. So we're dealing with people who are operating at a completely different like echelon, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I'm doing like Excel spreadsheets and I'm typing in these numbers, and it's like, hundreds and thousands of dollars. And I'm like, if I just deleted that, they wouldn't even notice. Like it's a blip on the pro forma. You know what I mean? So I just saw that my actions were not making a difference for real people. And so that's really what was the driving factor for me.
Yeah, and sometimes you just need to find some external force that tells you that it's okay. In your case, it was motivational speakers. I love Eric Thomas also, but yeah, sometimes you just need to see someone else who's even done it besides you, and maybe this is what Nick can do for you, is show you that it is totally possible.
Yeah.
And so you had a great finance job, you quit, you joined the honest company to do like basically telemarketing sales is kind of what it sounded like. And then you got headhunted or poached to do some financial coaching. And then you
Mhm.
eventually pivoted that into your own business. So
Yeah.
at what point did you realize that entrepreneurship is the best route for you? And when do you know when to quit your job to go do your own thing?
That's a great question. So what I would say is that, so when I was working at the financial planning firm, it was it was like the best taste of entrepreneurship, because even though it was with a big company, as a financial advisor, like you kind of run your own business, right? You're responsible
Mm,
for generating clients. You're responsible for serving. Like you get to somewhat create your own schedule. Like I remember the first time I was like, hey, I'm gonna have a lunch at like 12 and I'll be back at 12:30. He was like, okay, but if you need more time, like take an hour, right? I was just like, what? Like I'm not on the clock here, right? And so it was the experience of my results and my um, actions is what makes the difference versus how much time I spend. And reading books like 4 Hour Work Week, I was like, wow, I'm completely infatuated and obsessed with like efficiency, right? Productivity.
hmm
And if you're telling me that I can get the same amount of work done in 2 hours versus someone in 8 and still get paid the same, like that's the world that I want to be in, right? I want to get paid for the results that I produce, not how much time I spend. And so that really was like uh, it was like what's the phrase? It's like the toe into the pool, right? Like it was an
Yeah.
easier transition for me. So when I got into financial coaching, I was doing the exact same thing. I was having slightly different conversations because I'm really interested in like the relationship and mindset to money versus, what is the return on investment? And so from there, like I really got that I could have control over my schedule. I could have control over my pricing. I could have control over just the way that I structured my life, right? Like now, like it is part of my schedule. Like I take a nap every single day in the middle of the day. Like today, my nap was at 9:30 in the morning, right? Like I wake up at 6, do a work sprint, eat breakfast, relax, take a nap, and then go back at it again.
So for you, it was the ability to have freedom, and that was
Yes.
kind of like the big draw to entrepreneurship, essentially.
Yeah.
Did when you took that financial advisory role, which kind of like gave you that toe in the water, uh, a slight taste of entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
did you strategically choose that job because it would give you that opportunity? Or did it just kind of present itself and that it turned out to be this aha moment for you?
Yeah. That's a great question. So it, uh, can you rephrase the question one more time?
Did
Or
you
not rephrase, but just
strategic
say it again.
Did you strategically choose to take that financial advisory position, knowing that it would give you a taste of entrepreneurship before fully committing on your own?
Gotcha. Okay. So yes and no. I didn't know that that is what the lifestyle was going to be like, right? Because part of that also came with like we were driving up to Bakersfield like once a week, which is like I don't remember, like an hour and a half drive, right? It's just like you are required to do things as an entrepreneur that you wouldn't have to do if you were a traditional W-2 employee. So part of the reason why I took that was because one, it was again in the realm of finance, which is like what I had studied, and what I was genuinely passionate about. But two, I took the offer because they were also going to pay for certification. So I got my Series 7 and Series 66 that they were going to pay for. So there was an opportunity
Mm,
for me to not only learn something, but that it was going to be comped, right? And then also a driving factor like that had me even consider moving jobs from the honest company was that I was producing very, very good results. So just to put things into perspective, Honest Company is a subscription-based company, and our job, like my job, was to retain clients who wanted to cancel. The department average was 17% save rate. So they're losing 83% of business every day. And for me, when I got on the phone with an angry mom, my save rate was 76%. So 5 times the average. And I had requested within 3 months to be a trainer and actually ask for a raise. And they did not they were not interested in that. And so that's when I knew like, wow, so the company was great. I learned so much. I formed a lot of great relationships, but as it relates to career growth, in their eyes, not from a results perspective, I was replaceable because everyone wants to work with
yeah.
Jessica Alba, right? It's a very
Yep.
desirable thing. Like their MBAs, like, applying for the same job that I was doing. And so I was replaceable. And that's not something that was important to me, or that's not
Mm,
something that aligned with like how I wanted to be in relationship to a company. So
right, right.
it was because of that, plus the going back to finance, that really had me choose that role. And then the entrepreneurship, freedom of calendar, stuff like that came afterwards.
Okay. And I think one thing I want to highlight too, whether Nick did it on purpose, actually, well, he did because he chose that role because they would help sponsor that
Mm,
additional learning, but it's the investment in skills, which is something that I talk a lot about in my videos as well, is especially early on in your career. Like, I think doubling down and focusing on the skill set that you can learn is so much more valuable to me than like the brand name of the company that you work for, or like the title of job that you have, or how much it pays. Because I think in the long run, like short term, yes, it does give you some great gains, but I think in the long run, not only will it make you happy, as you can tell from how happy Nick is just from his attitude and persona, but also just like I do think it pays dividends in the long run because that's what companies pay executives for, right? Is like your specific skill set. They don't necessarily care too much about like where you used to come from. It's like, well, what are you going to do if I hire you and pay you a million something dollars a year, right? And that comes
right.
down to your skill set, which I think is a really key takeaway here. Okay.
Yeah. Can I
Um,
say one more thing about that, Corey?
yeah, go
And
ahead.
I think especially for recent college grads or people in the beginning of their job market, like it really is addicting to chase that shiny object or that big company. And
Totally.
I used to fall in that for sure, right? It's like I'm going to work at the top iBank, or I'm going to work at the top. I have to work at a big four accounting firm versus the smaller ones. And looking back, it was like, wow, I probably could have gotten a lot more experience and provided a lot more value if I worked at a smaller company, because my hand would be in, I'd be able to learn and be exposed to a lot of different things. Versus when you're at a really big company, sometimes it's, kind of get, lost in the shuffle. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you're making the transition, I would totally look at, what is it that you can gain from it? And then how can that, if you don't plan on staying there, how is that a stepping stone to what's next?
Okay. And would you recommend that everyone just kind of quit their 9 to 5 and go full bore for their entrepreneurial ideas, or should they try and find some medium like you did where they can get a bit of a taste? But I know that in your space, it's easier, right? Because within personal finance, you could be like your own insurance agent, or you could do what you did as a financial advisor. But like, let's say I wanted to be a YouTuber, right? Like, there's no real way that I could try that other than like doing my regular day job and then also being a YouTuber. So I guess
Mhm.
like what's your take on that? Like, do you think it's better for someone to just quit and then just go full bore for like a year, just
Yeah.
save up enough money and do it, or like what's your stance?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think I mean, it really does depend, right? I'm in full belief that there is power in burning all the ships to take the island, right? And going full in, quitting, like closing all the back doors. There's immense power in that for sure. There also, and that was like the approach that I took, right? Like I had no money and like student loan debt. And however, there is immense freedom that comes with knowing you have a runway, right? Even if it's for 3 or 6 months, right? So I think it really comes down to like, are you enjoying the process? I think the smart thing to do is if you are working a job, but you currently have a side hustle that you want to turn into an actual business, is for as long as you possibly can, run both at the same time. Right now, obviously, there's bandwidth issues, tiredness issues, needing sleep hours, but there's going to be a point when, one, by doing it as a side hustle, you get to actually test the market, right? Because the last thing I would want is for you to quit your job, try something that you have no idea if it's going to actually work, and then be, out of luck, right? So you might as well test first. And then once it makes sense to do that transition where it's like, oh, wow, the time spent at my current company is taking away from what is possible at the, entrepreneurial endeavor, then I would say that that's a good time to make the leap.
How do you know when that is? Is there like a dollar amount that you should be looking for, or?
Yeah, that's a really good starting place for sure, right? So if you're earning, let's just say $4,000 a month, working a traditional job, then it's like, okay, if I'm earning 2,000 a month through my side hustle, and if I got 40 hours a week to dedicate to this, could I generate another 2,000? Then if that makes sense, like by all means, right? Like, plus you'd probably enjoy it more. You would be more productive. You would have more fun. And then depending on what type of entrepreneurial endeavor, like you would even have more time.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is that what is that called, intersection point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
and it's
guess
different for everybody.
as you were talking about like your entrepreneurial endeavor, how did you ultimately land on what you do today, which actually kind of has evolved over time, which I also kind of want to unpack. So your
Yep.
original entrepreneurship venture
Venture.
was financial coaching and literacy, and
Yeah.
now you've paired that also with filmmaking
Yeah.
and videography.
Mhm.
So how did you ultimately arrive at either of those business ideas for yourself? Because maybe there's someone who's watching this who's like, I want to be my own boss, but I don't know what I would be a boss of. How do you kind of figure that out?
Yeah. So I really took a look at what it is that I'm truly passionate about, like the things that I would completely do for free, even if I didn't get paid. And I could talk about coaching people around their finances and their relationship to money forever, right? And I've been on 25 college campuses, and I've been on different stages, delivering workshops and keynotes and stuff like that. And the reason why that's important is because I knew that if I wanted to really grow and scale, I needed to produce content. So I was actually always on the receiving end, and I was always hiring videographers, right, working with them.
Mm,
Because I was always like, oh my gosh, those people with the camera, like they're so cool. I could never be like them, right? It's just like, like honestly, like yeah, I'm on stage, but like they're the real champions. And so when I saw that, like I was like, wow, like being able to actually learn the skill of videography, so I could do this myself, would be amazing, right? It was like passion. It was very interesting to me to learn about like YouTube and videography and how to use a camera and stuff like that. And when I moved to Des Moines to work with my mentor, he wanted me to really take over the social media aspect. So he was like, "You're in charge of the camera, like make content, right?" Like, and I had never used Final Cut Pro, no editing softwares, whatever the case is. Like, I was consuming 6 to 8 hours of YouTube content every day to learn how to do certain things. And that in and of itself was a huge tell of like, wow, I'm spending a lot of time. It doesn't feel like work. I really enjoy this. And so
mm,
in transitioning, as my financial coaching business started to evolve, I originally started working with recent college grads, right, who were dealing with student loan debt and transitioning careers, whatever the case is. Since I've been able to work with Olympic athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and then really enjoying working with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and people in organizations that have like a social impact and conscious driven like bottom line. And so the reason why that's important is because now with my videography services, I really do enjoy working with entrepreneurs who have that social impact and conscious driven aspect. And what's awesome is that videography is a complementary skill to financial coaching. Because if I know that, again, my whole context and my whole commitment in the world is to be of service. And so if I can focus on small business owners, solopreneurs, and they're, within 2 to 3 years of their business, or even 0 years, whatever the case is, I can not only help them with creating content through video, but I can also help them with the financial coaching side. And so I chose a skill
Ah,
that was transferable and that I could actually run separately, but also together.
okay. It's like two complementary businesses
Yeah.
that kind of feed revenue or leads or clients into each
Mhm.
other. Very,
Yeah.
very clever.
Yeah.
Very,
I know,
very
right?
clever.
It wasn't until I looked back, I was like, ooh, that was a good move, Nick. So,
So one of the other things that I wanted to circle back on to is kind of the idea of external forces that may
mhm.
be influencing how you ultimately play out your career or your life even.
Mhm.
And so circling back to the idea of parents,
Yeah.
especially you and I are both of Asian descent. Um, our parents typically tend to have very strong opinions and have big influence, at least for me, in terms of how I ultimately ended up choosing my first career. And very similar to Nick, I also quit my good job, safe job, even when I was up for promotion after my third year. And my parents totally freaked out. They were like, "You don't even have a job lined up. You want to totally change your entire career in life. Like, you make such good money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." But I had to have very similar internal conversations with myself, just as Nick did. But I can see how for a lot of folks, that's a huge factor, whether they know it or not, that could be weighing them down and stopping them from taking this leap of faith and betting on themselves. So, how did you have a conversation with your parents to kind of convince them that, look, everything is going to be okay? I got this. What was that like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just to, add some color and flavor to this, like my dad said some really mean things to me when I was like, "Hey, I am going to leave." Like, I mean, this is a recording, so I don't know if you're gonna chop it up, but so first of all, he used cuss words, and then he called me a name that I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I never thought my dad would call it." So, just to put it into perspective, like, yeah, it was a very, very difficult thing, but I think also too is like when I got really authentic with myself, because I would consider myself an extreme accommodator, right? Like it is important to me that the people around me are pleased and that they're happy and stuff like that. So that in and of itself is already a barrier, right? Like for example, my brother is someone who's more like, "Hey, I don't want to do that. I'm doing this," and like that allows him to like really make choices quickly, right? But I'm different in that way, and so I really had to get clear on what wasn't working about my life, right?
Mm,
And I had to really communicate effectively to my parents that like I'm really, really unhappy, right? And even saying like I know that I might be letting you down, and that this is a safe job. I'm just really, really not happy, right? Like I had to, I had to really tap into my emotions, which is something that I normally didn't do. I would hide it, cover it up, just like make sure that everything is okay and put on face. But when I mean, they saw me like down, and so being able to just communicate with them authentically made a difference for them. And at the end of the day, like my parents love me, right? And so they were like, "We want you to do what you feel is right." And my mom more so than my dad. And then it wasn't until I started producing results that my dad was like, "Ah, I got it. Like I didn't believe in you, and now I do. What you're doing is amazing." And so just know that it's not like you're going to get the approval and alignment from your loved ones immediately, and it might take years before that ever
mm,
happens, right? But at the end of the day, uh, a thought to think about is that you really are the only one that's living your life, right? At one point, my parents are going to pass, and the last thing that I would want is for me to be living a life that was inauthentic and for my parents. And if I really put myself in their shoes, the last thing that I would want, let me put it this way: if I had kids, the last thing that I would want for my kid is to live in a way that they thought I wanted them to, right?
mm.
So just really getting in touch with yourself. Yeah, it is a scary and hard conversation, but um, it is. It's a game worth playing. It's a game worth losing, and it is the game that is worth winning. So you just got to get clear on that for yourself.
So powerful. Yeah, be authentic to yourself
Yeah.
for sure. Last question to kind of wrap everything up. If you could do anything differently, or like maybe what was your biggest learning lesson when you were making the transition to become an entrepreneur? What was your biggest takeaway, or what would you do differently, or maybe both?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's the automatic like sound good conversation of like, oh, I don't regret anything in my
Yeah, I
life.
wouldn't change
Everything
anything
that
at all.
happened needed me
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
get to. However, the things that would really have made a difference is if I invested more in myself with like coaching, like hiring a coach or working more with mentors and investing in those types of conversations, talking more to professors, particularly in college. I would say in college is when I really could have shifted the trajectory a lot faster and then also to like a wider degree, right? Um, and so, things like joining Delta Sigma Pi, taking, transformational programs like the Landmark Forum, reading particular books sooner, like the 4 Hour Work Week and Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think if I, attempted at starting a business, even as a side hustle while I was in college, I would at least get the experience of like, oh, this is what it looks like to sell. This is what it looks like to market. This is, a minimum viable product. Like I would have been exposed to a lot of things sooner.
Would you ever say it's too late for someone to quit and become an entrepreneur?
No, dude. Oh man, you know this, dude. There are some like 85-year-old women starting like sourdough cooking class online teachable things, dude, generating like 6 figures, man. I think so long as you are passionate about something and there's something that you can provide that makes a difference for people and the quality of their lives, even if it's through food or fashion or whatever the case is. Yeah, age is just a number for sure. Age is just a number.
I totally agree. That was the answer I was looking for. And to put it in perspective for a lot of folks, most people work from like when they graduate college, which is typically 22, and then most people ideally like to retire around 65, right? So you've got 43 years of a career where you can either build or restart. So even if you're, let's say, in your 40s right now, you still have another 25 years to essentially build your own business or change careers and do something that you love. 25 years is a long time, right? You could even make it to an executive level role within 25 years. So I never think it's ever too late, whether it's to pursue or create your own business that you're passionate about or change up your life at all. Nick, is there anything else that you want to get off your chest or anything you want to talk about? Or do you have any plugs for your upcoming business or anything that you're working on?
Yeah. So thanks for the opportunity. So, one, I just appreciate for those of you who are still listening and watching, like it was awesome to be able to share space with you. And Corey, thanks for having me on for sure. I get a lot from myself in being able to share my story and just, have amazing conversations like this. So just know that from my part, selfishly, like this was amazing for me. It made a difference for me. And second, like there was, I forgot who said it, but there was a quote where it was like, instead of working from 22 to 65, like why not ask the question of why not ask the question like what job or what would you be doing that you would never want to retire from,
Mm,
right? And I think that's a really good north star for people, because for me, I know that I've found exactly what I want to do, and I also know that it's going to evolve over time. But what I'm doing is exactly what I would want to be doing if I was getting paid or not. And it's just a blessing that I'm getting paid for it, right? But I plan to work until I am physically and mentally unable. And so from that standpoint, that also shifts to the financial conversation of like, hey, if you're doing what you love, eventually or even immediately, the money will show. And the way that you live your life could be completely different. Because what if you never needed to retire, right? Like people stress out about retirement. So yeah, that's what I want to say. And in terms of plugs, like one thing that I will say, just in terms of like what is possible, and it doesn't have to look like my life, but with the work that I do, everything is remote. So that's something that COVID has actually sped up. But I'm a digital nomad, so I travel prior to COVID. I was going to go to 9 different countries and 2 different continents, and then be able to work from Bali and Poland and Greece and Croatia and all that stuff, and really live a lifestyle that was in total alignment with what's important to me. So it was being of service and doing what I love. And I think if you have those really be the guiding light where you're standing at the end, I think the questions of how should I transition or where should I transition becomes a little easier when you're standing in the future.
awesome. And if people want to get in touch with you, either for your videography work or for your financial coaching, are they all the same links
Yes.
to find you?
So
Okay.
yeah. So if you go to nickdur.com, there's sections for both the financial coaching and the videography.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nick, for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And let us know in the comments also what other types of careers or industries you want us to focus on and chat with for the next podcast. Thank you very much.
See you guys.